So guys, time for some late night work. Time for some late night runs. I want to go on some more journeys. Uh, streets cuts out. Ooh, high vitality though.
Probably Nothing live show are now available for link below. Hey there, absolutely love the show. Haven't watched your what's the largest one of the top three matches. I work at a facility that does a lot of testing time. Coming into work early one morning and from a loading dock area, there's these long black curtains lined up all the way to the facility used for testing certain materials. Um, a coworker and I were standing by the place that we worked right near the facility, and we're able to see what they moved off of a train car into this area, and what looked like a large metallic object. What I guess some people call hieroglyphic writing on it, and probably not something that we should have seen. Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Debrief. My name is Chris Ramsey, and today we are going to be taking yet another look at the story of Amaury Rivera. You might remember when he was working at a nightclub. He took a few photos of the band for his cousin, and on his way home at about 4:30 in the morning, was chased on the side of his car by two what he describes as grotesque beings with large heads and almond-shaped eyes, and they took him aboard. He perceived to be some type of craft or underground base. He wasn't too sure. But when he awoke, he wasn't alone. In fact, he was next to 14 other people. They were then met by a human-looking entity, claimed to be human from the planet Ta. And these gray beings that were around him were sort of these biological drones, if you will. He then proceeded to take the entire group on a tour, but not a real tour, more of a virtual tour, a projection, as he called it, brought them to their planet Pa, where they saw some amazing things. But projection number 2 and 3, which we're going to be getting into today, turned out to be quite earth-shattering, enough to make Amaury himself leave his current life and become a doomsday prepper somewhere in the jungles of Puerto Rico. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to find out exactly what frightened Amaury so bad and what compelled him to move up into the mountains and become a doomsday prepper. Strap yourselves in, folks. It's a wild ride. Obviously, suspend your disbelief. And before we get into the rest of the video, a quick word from our sponsors. You know, there's something about shooting in close up for hours. You tend to notice everything. Every little detail, the insecurity, especially on your face. Shaving used to be one of those things I didn't think too much about. Until I started seeing myself regularly on camera. Razors the dull halfway through and claw constantly, leave your neck irritated right before you hit record, and somehow you're paying like $30 for a refill. That's why I switched to Harry's Plus. It's simple, but it actually works. First thing, this handle. Solid metal, it's got a good weight to it, not fighting it, you're in control. Shave is just clean and consistent. Pivot that moves naturally with your face, and the blades are refined, each one honed in 3 different angles. So it cuts cleanly without that fully. Spacing helps prevent clogging, which used to slow me down. And there's aloe and vitamin E in the strip. So your skin feels calm after. So right now, you can get the Harry's Plus trial set for just $10 at harrys.com/area52. You get the razor, the 5-blade cartridge, shave gel, and a travel cover. They'll deliver refills right to your door. And if you don't love it, they'll make it right. No questions asked. That's harrys.com/area52 for the $10 trial set. Let them know we sent you. Stay sharp, folks. And don't forget to check out area52.shop. We got a lot of new stuff on there, as well as some old stuff, some stuff that's on sale, some stuff that's just come out. Your choice. You can also support us by joining the membership. $5 a month, you get access to lots and lots of things. I think that about wraps it up. We're paying the bills, folks. We pay the bills. But let's get into reading part 2 of the abduction of Amaury Rivera. I tell you, folks, not only if you haven't seen part 1, go watch part 1, by the way. But there are pictures. One of the only reasons I take this case seriously. It's really hard to take abduction cases with high conviction based on just story. And not that they didn't happen, or not that I don't want them to happen, or not that I believe or don't believe. It's just you have to take things at face value. And without any clear physical evidence, it's really hard to do that. This is one of those rare cases where right after the abduction, right after he got dropped off, he snapped these photos. And we're going to find that out while reading this, hopefully today. So let's just get into it. Okay, I got 2 coffee cups here, one from last time. Here we go. Like this video, subscribe, hit the notification bell. The room seemed as it had gray walls again. These apparently solid walls now turned into light, daylight. Suddenly, we were all sitting on top of the mountain. It was a nice sunny day, as opposed to the first projection. This one had sound. We could hear the breeze between the trees, birds chirping, cars in the distance, and even a rooster. This projection appeared even more real than the other because of the sound. The only thing left was to feel the actual breeze in my hair, the sun on my skin. From my position, I could see the ocean, lots of little houses spread out everywhere. The lampposts looked like toothpicks. The vegetation of this place, though green, wasn't as alive as the one we'd previously seen, and there were no flowers. The green was rather opaque in comparison. Our seats started to turn. We then saw some towers that looked like they were used for communication of sorts. The guy told us that this place was in the western part of Puerto Rico. It looked like a normal, peaceful day. Judging from the sun's orientation, it might have been around noon. All of a sudden, everything was engulfed in a dark shadow, as if the day had sped up tremendously. As I looked up, I saw something obstructing the sun. Only a small portion of the sun was visible. I thought of maybe an eclipse. A loud buzzing sound was heard in the distance, a continuous thunder. We all saw it at the same time, up in the sky. A rock. It was crumbling into pieces as it came down, but its size, instead of decreasing, only increased as it got closer. Everyone in our group, including our guide, his 2 companions, was headed towards that dark object that fell from the sky. Before we left that position on top of the mountain, I thought I heard what seemed to be people screaming. I couldn't see them, but I heard them. Some of the others that were with me also started to scream. It was horrifying. I wanted to know about this thing. Where would I go? I remember wanting to close my eyes, but I could not. I had to see. I'll never forget those screams. They were so haunting, I felt an almost uncontrollable urge to tear my clothes off. As the object got closer, I noticed it was on fire. For a moment, I thought it was the sun, but when we got to a height that placed us over the rock, the sun was then on top of us. We now had a better view of it. It had an enormous fire tail made up of its own burning pieces like lava. I placed my hands on my ears and yelled off the top of my lungs, "No!" The thunder-like sound got so loud I thought my eardrums would burst. I simply cannot describe the sound this rock island made as it fell. If you stand close to the space shuttle's rockets during takeoff, maybe you would have an idea of what it was like. It got to the point I could not even hear myself screaming. I was about to collapse. I think I actually did for a moment. I'm not lying when I say that at the time. Okay, so we're obviously witnessing a giant meteor about to strike the Earth. I suppose in the vicinity of Puerto Rico. We apparently fell with this island rock. The falling sensation was terrible. By then, I'd stopped screaming and could only watch dumbfounded as the next events unfolded. We stopped in midair and saw the rock hit the ocean near the western coast of Puerto Rico. It caused an explosion, as if a bomb had gone off. The impact created a huge vapor, water, and smoke ball and reached our position in the air. Thought we'd get wet, but this was impossible. The island was shaken. We descended a bit more near the coast. Screams were heard again, and every time the island shook. Every tree vibrated. The sun still shone as if unaware of all that was happening. Vapor ball turned into rain, fell everywhere. We then heard another thunder-like sound, this time caused by an earthquake. A woman that was in group couldn't take it anymore and fainted. She slipped from her seat, and I thought she would fall into that disaster, yet she fell only onto the invisible floor of that projection. She looked like she was floating in the air while unconscious. Two beings with fetus-like heads rapidly went to her as if gliding through the air. They picked her up and placed her in her seat, yet she was still not conscious. I thought of helping her, but I simply felt paralyzed and about to pass out myself. Couldn't feel my feet anymore. The little men returned to the human guides inside when something immense caught my attention. A wall had been raised, a gigantic, threatening, mortal wave. This devastating wall kept getting bigger as the water receded from the shore, leaving an uncommon landscape visible to the naked eye. Corals, reefs, and all kinds of sea life were now exposed to direct sunlight. You could see underwater valleys and hills, as well as great aquatic cliffs. What I could only guess were fish leaped over the now exposed sea floor due to the ocean being pulled back. The wall grew solid and overwhelming. I thought of my friends and family, and I thought they were only cleverly projected images. I heard the island shake again, and with it the horror screams of the Puerto Rican population. When the sea had receded a few miles out, the wall then started to make its way to the island. I could imagine what was about to happen. I wanted to beg the human guide to stop the projection. I looked at him and his two companions for a moment, and I felt hate. He was just standing there, so unmoved, while all this was happening, sure of himself, untouchable. I didn't want to see what was happening, but all the while I couldn't stop watching. The Great Wall was approaching land. It got to the coast, but it didn't stop there. It kept going inland. It seemed to be dragging everything in its path. Thousands of hysterical screams were drowned in a matter of seconds. Everything was dead and silent. A giant wave broke somewhere out of our range of vision, covered everything, even the mountains. Somehow we started to get a better view of everything. The sea was full of debris and garbage. We saw hundreds of destroyed homes and their remains floating everywhere. Palm trees and other trees had been yanked out of the ground. What looked like a little island was actually on top of one of the highest mountains of the area. Thousands of drowned people and animals floated in the water. The strange thing was that everything happened on broad daylight. The sun shone like it did before the disaster, as if nothing happened. Yeah, it's got to be an unsettling feeling, to say the least, folks, seeing the sun on a beautiful day and this all happening. The detail in which Omori goes into here, I mean, clearly, if this didn't come from some type of message or dream, it requires an immense creative mind, because he is detailing things that, science fictionists or science fiction type of movies that maybe can talk after, really being immersed in this sort of world building. It's just hard to imagine that he's just making this up as he goes. But, then again, we have to remain a little bit skeptical here, not only whether or not Omori is telling the truth, but whether or not these beings are telling Omori the truth. That's an interesting layer that we have to dissect as well. But the waves pulling back and revealing things, and the sudden silence when everything gets drowned out. These are incredible details. All of us in the group cried uncontrollably. The lady who had fainted had regained consciousness. The emotional pain was very strong. It made you want to cease living. The guy tried to console us by reminding us that they were merely projected images, and that it wasn't really happening right now. My thoughts were all over the place. The images we saw went in and out of my mind like in a television with a child holding the remote control. My nervous system was about to burst. I imagined horrible scenes related to my family. I thought that maybe some of the people who had drowned were them. I Our seats revolved slowly so that we could observe all the horror. The only thing not covered by the turbulent sea of the area we were looking at was that small portion of land that looked like a little island. I don't know if all Puerto Rico is now underwater, since we could only see this area in particular. The water looked dark, dirty. The debris in it was tremendous. I didn't see any more birds. The only human presence was us. We turned to where we faced the guide and his creations again. I thought I saw sadness in the face of the one that called himself Amaran. We headed towards that small portion of land that was not underwater. Was this all that was left of Puerto Rico? Or maybe now, Puerto Chico?
Why me? Why am I right from the job? Because I had an opportunity for a month in it. And I like it so much.
In every field of human endeavor, from time to time, a voice, a face, or a performance emerges that stands apart. So actors, to athletes, politicians, even alien abductees, were mesmerized by the effects of fame. And it's so wonderfully human to judge from living room. But what would you do if one day millions of people suddenly wanted something from you? Granted, wanted him to step ranches to a ranch. We are going to presumably see UFOs. We're also interviewing Corey Good and his family, which has been abducted by aliens for some years now. He's been a celebrity actually. I am intrigued as to what's going to fall out. No idea what's going to happen over the next 4 days. First thoughts as we're arriving, thoughts of Rio, beautiful area, country, let's kind of get it. See what's on this ranch. So people, this would be really great when I do, end up being abducted. So I run my dog through there. I don't believe in aliens. I think that, the universe is too big for us to be the only things out here. So I'm curious and trying to keep an open mind with what's happening. It's one thing to watch lights in the sky or study UFO forms. It's another thing entirely to meet someone who's having change and stuff. To some, it's the missing piece in a cosmic puzzle. To others, the lens drawn from what's wrong. One side may more rejected. One thing's clear. You can't talk about modern disclosure without talking about this man.
Well, is Corey Good.
A lot of stories lately about Corey.
And Corey Good has been one of my favorite guests on the show.
Corey Good, one insider I found. Testimonies I found fully
Corey Good.
Really, like his.
I felt like my life was really being turned upside down. My reality was completely changing.
Crazy times, right? It's like everybody in the world has come to this time back.
I want to say thank you for everything you've done and for risking your life.
My whole life, I never felt like I was liking else. My voice, energy, felt energy differently. With intuition, I have a good idea of what people are going to say before they say it. A lot of the times, what's going to happen before it happens. I am able to feel it to that in childhood. But my parents would, I was spending every night, every hall, every corridor, till 3 in the morning. Like, as long as I got shut out, it's before I had full recall, I was working on military, and I was taking guards, I was command communications and intelligence. After that, so for a little while, that's when I ended up going to Southern National University, following in my grandfather's footsteps, the minister, and then, yeah, the rest is what it is.
One I met in college, Oklahoma, and it was my sophomore year. We went to a Christian college, so we met in chapel. We've been married for like 30 years, so 30 years. One.
I think I've gone all sorts of things. I've gone micro facial expressions, body language. It took my wife a while to get used to it and ask her about it. She said, "Get out of my head." Because I was telling her, I said, "This is what you're thinking." And she was figuring out kind of abilities. My wife has abilities, and therefore my children do. They're intuitive, empathic, and are also able to interact with people who have passed on. I would say they're pretty equal, but my daughter has more control and understanding over it. Doesn't get freaked out, kind of embraces it a little bit more.
I think I've always had it, but it wasn't until I was older that I really recognized it. And started.
Northern Peru, 1987. Archaeologist Walter Palmer uncovers the lost tomb of the Lord of Sihon, intact and untouched by thieves. This burial place is considered one of the richest in the world. The Lord Sihon was once a king of the land of region along the coast. Gold, silver, incredibly beautiful artifacts, textiles, and art. Urban archaeologists sometimes call it the Inca's tomb of South America. The objects that they found in these tombs were unusual. The burial chamber was filled with artifacts that included ceramic pots, gold, copper, and silver utensils, and feather ornaments some researchers believe were intended to accompany and protect the Lord of Seaman in the afterlife. Some archaeologists suggest that several of his servants, wives, and consorts were sacrificed, and their bodies were placed inside to accompany him into the afterlife. We see that God's plan is not buried in isolation. We see that he is buried with some of the people. And so when we extrapolate from this and when we realize that other cultures have been doing the same kind of schematic, what we're seeing is that these people believe that the afterlife was very much a physical place. It was believed that he would have needed some of these helpers. It is believed that he would probably want to be reunited. It was reunited with his most immediate family and some of his most close advisors. Among the incredible treasures buried with the Lord of Sihon were strange statues that some researchers believe are evidence of extraterrestrial beings. As well as servants and all the artifacts, they found strange and weird anthropomorphized figurines that some people say resemble beings of other worlds. They show bug-eyed people who look like a normal human. So you have at Sihon really a tomb that seems to show extraterrestrial beings, anthropomorphic beings that are half animal, half human. People who don't look like a normal human being. look like extraterrestrials. Lord Science has very unique elements that we found within this miracle. Are these beings that we're going to help him go into the afterlife? Possibly back in space with that. The Lord of Satan's disciples believed that he was not a mere mortal, but actually half God and half man. But specifically, what is of interest is that he has a face mask which is made of gold, and his body largely is dressed with copper shield. So all of a sudden, we see somebody whose that body is meant to resemble really something else, a shining, the divine being, which he was once believed to be, but also which in that he was believed to once again become. Once the Lord of Satan really half man, half God, and his followers believed, and like the figurines found in his grave, represent the ancient rulers' extraterrestrial origins. So, is it possible that this stone, like the ones found in Egypt, serve as a portal to the stars? Ancient astronaut theorists say yes, and believe more evidence can be found by looking at the boat-shaped coffins and strange miracle rituals of the ancient Russian people. South Sulawesi, Indonesia. Here can be found the cave tombs of the Taj Russia, the site of a complex funeral ritual that dates back to 3000 BC. The Taurasian people believe death is a gradual process toward the afterlife. Many cultures believe in an afterlife, something that goes on beyond the physical body. The Taurasian people in Egypt are very interesting and unusual because among the most elaborate rituals they have are not rituals of life but for death. They have incredible ceremonies when people die, they have huge feasts, and they have these incredible celebrations for the dead. Driving people with the dead into these special coffins, which are also like a model of a spaceship, and then they inter them up on these cliffs. And their beliefs too are that ultimately the dead are returning to the stars, and the dead people will also return to the stars as well. Standing in the most modern locations of the greatest cities on Earth are massive stone obelisks pointing to the sky. When we look at twin tower cities around the world, Paris, London, New York, Washington, D.C., they all have one thing in common: obelisks. There are obelisks at key locations in some of the most important cities on the planet. In a key square in Istanbul, there is an ancient obelisk from Egypt with hieroglyphics. Another is in Paris, at the Place de la Concorde, which is the largest square in Paris. All of them, they are found across the globe. The vast majority of the world's obelisks have a single point of origin: ancient Egypt. In fact, most obelisks that adorn major cities were originally part of Egypt's ancient landscape. In ancient Egypt, there were over 100 obelisks that were sculpted and erected. Only 9 or 10 of them remain in Egypt. Well, what actually are outside of Egypt? Obelisks have literally become the spoils of war, where country invades Egypt or country overtakes Egypt. This goes back to Roman times, and they would take obelisks away to erect in their own capital city, whether it was Rome under Roman times or later Constantinople. The removal of obelisks from Egypt continued right into the 19th century. The Paris obelisk was carried to function in 1833. London purchased its obelisk from Egypt in 1878. Cleopatra's Needle was given to New York as a gift from the Egyptian life, like seeing an inherent power within. The Egyptian obelisk is one of the most unique pieces of architecture in ancient Egypt. Every obelisk you look at, it is a different mathematical equation, geometrically perfect. It describes perfect. They were fortified by granite, and they were fortified and towered upwards, and eventually ended in this perfect pyramid. Most obelisks are found in pairs, often at the entrance to certain temples, and most of the obelisks have beautiful hieroglyphs carved into them. Most hieroglyphs that are on the obelisks are always speaking of the gods to be there for it on its journey to the afterlife, so they can arrive to the afterlife and live for immortality, and the top is dedicated to the sun god Ra, one of the most powerful gods in ancient Egypt. The pyramid-shaped stone on top of each obelisk, called the Mehmet stone, was a design rooted in Egyptian mythology. The Mehmet was the vehicle which honored the god of all creation. He used to travel back and forth between the heavens and earth. We think of the Mehmet as earth because it was believed to have come from the stars originally. When the god of the tomb arrived on earth, he arrived in the Mehmet. When the god of the tomb left the earth, he rose in the Mehmet and presumably went back to the stars. Curiously, the ancient Egyptian gods were often depicted as human-like figures who came from the stars and possessed incredible powers. And as far as ancient astronaut theorists are concerned, accounts of gods traveling in the Mehmet could be a case of misunderstood technology. We always have to remember that the technological frame of reference that our ancestors had cannot be compared to the technological frame of reference that we have today. Our ancestors perhaps witnessed some type of a craft descending from the sky, out of which the extraterrestrials came and jump started civilization. And they tried to replicate the vehicles which those guys arrived in. The Valley of the Kings, Egypt, the Taj Mahal, Agra, India, and King Pakal tomb, Palenque, Mexico. Spectacular miracle sites that take back thousands of years are found across the world. According to mainstream researchers, these locations are the final resting places for ancient leaders. But when they also serve a more profound, perhaps extraterrestrial purpose. Why do we have the most massive of constructions in the far distant past? Well, according to the ancient texts of the ancient traditions, this knowledge was given to our ancestors by the gods. The soul function was as the require virtually all of the of spiritual energy, images of astronomy, and a strong belief in the existence of other, arguably more spiritual worlds. Both cultures share this notion of somehow opening a doorway, opening a stargate, opening a gateway to another dimension so the soul can return. We know that it is meant because the soul is going to go on a voyage to the outside. In the ancient world, there was a view that this life that we have, this physical life, is our opportunity to prepare ourselves for a vast destiny that lies beyond this life. Could ancient tombs really have served another or extraterrestrial purpose? Perhaps as portals to reunite the deceased with celestial beings. Many ancient astronaut theorists believe the answers can be found by the taking a closer look at the mysterious texts of ancient Egypt. Saqqara, situated on the west bank of the Nile River, 20 miles south of Cairo. This archaeological site is one of the oldest and largest burial grounds in all of Egypt. There were gateways to the altar. It is true these countries that the king would begin a journey into the outer world in order to face obstacles, dangers, and threats. And if you will overcome these threats, he would begin a passage to the afterlife kingdom of the sea. Acropolis lies the pyramid of King Teti, the first ruler of Egypt's sixth dynasty. Teti built his pyramid and an adjoining mortuary temple during his reign more than 4,000 years ago.
James, I need a financial plan.
I have your new budget and financial plan ready.
I just moved. Why is this so high?
Found a lower plan. You'll save $35 a month.
Yes. And finally, the espresso machine under 300.
Done.
Done. I transferred 300 from my savings to my checking.
Done.
But you're so lucky to have a partner like that. 2015. Even when he's playing his favorite game, Royal Kingdom, he's still mine.
What's left of the ancient causeway? Very much annoyance. All to be done. This film is very important. It contains all the strangest writing in the world. Text. According to archaeologists, the pyramid texts are a collection of ancient Egyptian religious writings that date back to 2400 BC. They contain passages about Osiris, the Egyptian god of the afterlife, and descriptions of how to prepare the pharaoh's remains during his ascent to the heavens after death. The pyramid texts are all about the stars. It's all about the king becoming the star. It's all about the king ascending to the sky and joining Osiris or Orion of the sky. But according to ancient astronaut theorists, the pyramid texts didn't only guide the pharaoh to an afterlife, they actually provided instruction on how the pharaoh would travel to other worlds. It's important to realize that ancient Egyptians say that about 25,000 years ago, the gods lived amongst them. Then they disappeared again. What the pyramid texts are saying is that we, the ancient Egyptians specifically, of course, are able to reach the gods again. Well, this we have died. But once we're dead, we're able to join the gods once again. What we're talking about is some kind of other dimensional travel called the soul to another plane. Egypt. Along the west bank of the Nile River lies the Valley of the Kings. Here, in 1922, archaeologist Howard Carter discovered the 3,000-year-old tomb of the pharaoh Tutankhamun. When Howard Carter looked at the burial chamber of Tutankhamun, the first time anyone had seen the burial chamber of the pharaoh, untouched since the pharaoh's death in 1433 BC, was born the boy king's first possession. Very much the idea of having what you this world, with you to be there in the next world. And part of this whole idea of the takes a magical shape to produce the next world. In order to become on this journey into the afterlife, the walls and ceiling of the burial chamber were decorated with illustrations from the Egyptian sacred Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead is a collection of spells relating to the transition between death and rebirth. The basic idea was to provide the dead person what they needed magically to get through, because there were various trials and tribulations to be faced before you were reborn into the next world. They had to encounter various difficulties. Everything from giant cockroaches to horrendous beings with knives and heads. Nightmare visions as through. And one of the things the Dead does is to explain how you deal with these various demons. Inside Tutankhamun's tomb, the archaeologists also discovered a sarcophagus of the young king's embalmed body, well preserved. Vital organs removed and sealed in jars. Like many ancient Egyptians, King Tut was mummified based on the belief that upon entering the underworld, his body would regain its powers of movement and speech. There seems to have been a time of belief that the stellar or masculine aspect of redemption maintained a contact and then the soul returned back to the physical body. The ancient Egyptians believed the tomb was the vessel in which the deceased body, attended by his visiting soul, journeyed to the world beyond the grave. We today see the idea of being placed in a coffin, put on the ground, as something like, simply disposing of the dead, buried of the dead. For them, it was far more. It was like going back to the primordial work of a scarlet goddess whose name was Newt, and she was represented by the Milky Way. And by doing that, you eventually will go back to being a star. It was believed that the soul itself could become a star. The practice of preserving a dead body or embalming did not begin with the Egyptians. Its origin found in Chile and Peru, dating to 5000 BC. But what compelled ancient men to preserve their bodies after their deaths? They believed they would return to earth, body and soul. So, what did they see in life that would suggest that such a thing was even possible? Throughout history, mankind has consistently believed that when they die, they would go to the stars. The Egyptians believed that too. You have to ask yourself, where did our ancestors get these ideas that on our death we're being transported to the stars, to another world? What does that come from? Extraterrestrials. The techniques that were used were given to the ancient Egyptians by the gods, the guardians of the sky. Were these guardians of the sky? Well, according to ancient astronaut theorists, they were flesh and blood extraterrestrials. Shanxi Province, China, April 5th, 2019. In the ceremonial courtyard at the mausoleum of the Yahweh, 10,000 people gathered to watch a traditional dragon dance.
The dragon dance is an ancient ceremony which for thousands of years has been a representation of the turning to the sky.
This is part of the Chinese culture, of the Chinese civilization. So it's very important for the Chinese to have this dance. The Chinese people from the very little from toddlers on know about the dragons. The dragons are ever present. Ancient China was a land where humans lived in tandem with the divine beings, with the gods, and the gods rode upon the dragons. So for this reason, the dragon became revered as a sacred symbol throughout China. Here in Shaanxi, in what is known as the Qingming Festival, the ceremony celebrates to be the father of all Chinese people. The yellow emperor, also known as who founded Chinese civilization 5,000 years ago. The yellow emperor, Huang Yi, is this semi-mythical figure in Chinese history. He's an originator of Chinese civilization and culture, and he is credited with numerous inventions that came to define Chinese civilization. Anything from domesticating animals to the calendar and various astronomical sciences. The yellow emperor also crafted a magical cloak, and one version of the story has a virgin called, and then the yellow emperor jumps on the dragon's back, and the dragon ascends up to heaven.
The Chinese would say we're the descendants of the yellow emperor. As one way of putting out Chinese seem to be the very founder of Chinese civilization. In fact, just about everything that you would think as the basic element of civilization is somehow associated with the yellow emperor.
Well, we Chinese people consider ourselves the descendants of the dragon. So there should be a certain connection between the identities of Chinese people, both as the descendants of the yellow emperor and as the descendants of the dragon. At the end of the Qingming Festival, the dragon is released into the sky, symbolizing Wang Yi's departure from Earth to the heavenly realm.
The yellow emperor is believed to have flown up to the sky and dwelt in the pole star in the very center of the sky. And there he lived forever.
The idea of a dragon, a metaphysical being who moved very real, had to come from somewhere. They were not just imagined. A complicated being like Chinese dragons, they had to see objects that were flying at incredible speeds and the superior beings riding on them. Now, from the ancient astronaut perspective, the dragon was never a dragon. It was a flying craft. It is only natural that our ancestors would describe these things as living creatures with fire and smoke. They had never seen anything like it before. One has to wonder if Wang Yi himself was misinterpreted and that he was an extraterrestrial when he arrived in an extraterrestrial craft. In China, in UFO research, a dragon is the symbol of aircraft. There is a view that the Yellow Emperor arrived in the wonderful land of China through an aircraft and he flew back afterwards. Could the story of Wang Yi traveling on a dragon be an account of an extraterrestrial traveling in a spaceship, as ancient astronaut theorists suggest? In the modern world, tales of dragons are widely considered to be strictly a product of the imagination, but some researchers believe physical evidence exists that suggests that the ancient stories of dragons could be true. December 30th, 2013. In an international television news broadcast, former Canadian Minister of National Defense, Paul Hilliard, made an astonishing statement. He claims to acknowledge that extraterrestrials are visiting Earth.
Why do you say that UFOs are as real as airplanes flying over our heads?
Well, there's But they have rules. The interview sent shockwaves through the media. First question: why a high-level official would make such an announcement? Paul Hellyer first came forward in 2005, but it wasn't until January 2014 that his story truly went viral. I gave me the dubious distinction of being the first person to capture Frank in the G8 group of countries who ever said categorically, with other species, UFOs are real, and you have to accept this being real. This is difficult territory. I understand. Jobs on this. To help your statements. Is it possible that there is a galactic federation of extraterrestrials overseeing Earth? But if so, what is the evidence behind such astounding claims? Industry-leading performance. Reliable power and great team. Finishing the work is just half the job. New trilogy is getting it done right. The wall rise above the rug. Available at
It would go so freaking hard. So I should just get cards. Cards should come. What are you guys asking? Pull the card. I told you I pulled the card. No, I told you the clip would go so hard. The clip would go so hard. I told you guys. Box.gg is the place to build. With data AI, you don't need to use plain runway or CapCut. You can generate the desired video directly with a single click using the same software. Any type of video can be easily handled, whether it's the cinematic feel, happiness environment, or other interesting videos. They all offer you a unique experience, like this one. A golden retriever turned into a knife. Try this pattern. Oh, there are many models. There are even more interesting modes. Leverage on Flash.
Edgewood Arsenal, Chesapeake Bay, Maryland, 1952. As part of a secret government program termed Project Edwin, medical doctor and psychiatrist Andrea Puharich set up a special laboratory where psychics and military personnel gathered to investigate psychological manipulation and hallucinogenic drugs. Perhaps one of the most compelling and controversial aspects of Puharich's research was channeling, which involved making contact with non-physical beings through the use of psychics. Very important to notice that this was a serious scientific endeavor. No candles or holy water, any of that. Orange juice, the Faraday cage, the copper roll. It was specially insulated according to U.S. Naval standards, would prohibit mid-level electromagnetic waves, electrostatic. In this Faraday cage, individuals would relax and allow the mind over matter signal to take place. In December 1952, Puharich invited Hindu mystic and doctor D.G. Vinod to one of these channeling sessions. During the experiment, Vinod went into a deep trance and made contact with a group of entities called the Nine.
At the very beginning, they just announced themselves as the Nine Principles of the Universe. Well, that's pretty big to start with. But nevertheless, they said they were extraterrestrials. They were forces from beyond.
The Nine said that they were an eternal presence, that they had been watching humanity from the very beginning, and that they were gods, guides, and this was what particularly interested Courage, the idea that if they are gods, they of course have wisdom, and Courage wanted to ask for guidance. The Nine came up with a number of different messages involving their being guardians to the human race, creators even.
Puharich said, "What is your name? Who are you?" And that was the great revelation because The being said, I am Atum, and Atum was the great father god of ancient Egypt, and introducing not only the 9 principles, but the 9 great gods of the Ennead of ancient Egypt. Is it possible that March actually made contact with the 9 great gods of Egypt? Could this be evidence of a long-standing federation of extraterrestrials overseeing earthly affairs?
Ooh.
On the Lasiki Plateau, over half a mile above sea level, lies the Dictyon Cave. This sprawling complex of caverns stretches nearly 1.5 square miles.
Got her.
And archaeological finds have shown a human presence dating as far back as 6,000 years ago. Historians believe the first inhabitants of the
Two
area
pools.
lived
Two
inside the
pools.
cave. And according to legend, these many chambers were once home to otherworldly beings. Zeus, the Greek god of thunder. In Greek mythology, Zeus is the son of Cronus, the king of the first generation of gods, known as the Titans. Zeus's father Cronus is
I forgot I had those.
excited about giving birth to a child because he's heard a prophecy that one of his children is going to overthrow him. So just as soon as the children are born, he just swallows them all down. Now his mother, Rhea, is Cronus' wife. She thought about this, so what she does is substitute a rock that she's wrapped up in swaddling clothes, gives it to Cronus, and she swallows down. Then what she does is hide Zeus away in a cave, so he grows up there. In theology, the 8th century BC poet Hesiod describes the cave Zeus was hidden in as lying in these heavy mountains, and specifically near the city of Lycos, the location of the Dictyon Cave. But the similarities between this cave and the cave of Zeus described in Greek mythology go much further. The ancients say that when they're talking about mythology, it is about those recorded events of that past. According to the Greek myth, the child Zeus was nourished on a mixture of honey and milk at the center of the womb. Now, around 1900 AD, a chamber in the Dictyon Cave was identified by locals as the place of Zeus. And when archaeologists went in there, they discovered an ounce with remains of human written covering, among them honey and goat milk. These remains date back 4,000 years, the exact period in which the ancient Greek stories took place. The question is this once again a coincidence that modern excavations find remains in this cave that match up with what's written in Greek mythology? Also found in the Dictyon Cave, numerous artifacts date back to what would have been the time of Zeus's childhood, according to the Greek stories. Among them was a fragmentary inscription bearing a hymn dedicated specifically to Zeus. Could the Dictyon Cave really be the cave described in Theogony? And if actual locations from Greek mythology really do exist, could legendary characters and events also be based on historical fact? We think of mythology as something which has been invented. The Greek when we look at ancient Greek, they believe that all the time it happened, that it was born in heaven by deity. In Greek mythology, the War of the Titans is a celestial battle waged by Zeus and his siblings, known as the Olympians, against their father Cronus and the Titans. The Olympians, who are the victors in this battle, were the gods worshipped by the ancient Greeks. But according to ancient astronaut theorists, these human-like beings may have been something other than divine, and this mythical war may have been an actual historical event. To support this claim, they point to the existence of similar myths and stories told by different cultures throughout the world. When it comes to warring parties of God, Greece is not a standalone issue. We have the same thing in Valhalla. In Norwegian mythology, we have this idea that the gods fought amongst themselves as well. We also have stories from Sumerians, Babylonians, and Hittite accounts where it says that there was a fought between gods. We see the same story of Titans being overthrown by a new set of gods. In the Sumerian epics of the Anunnaki coming here as the original culture in ancient Iraq. So these similarities tell of a warring race of beings that squabble amongst themselves about the rights of various areas on the Earth. Planet Earth, 65 billion years ago. An 8-mile wide asteroid hurtles towards the planet at approximately 12 miles per second and strikes the region now known as the Yucatan Peninsula with a force of 100 billion megatons of TNT. According to mainstream science, this catastrophic event forever changed the climate and the topography of Earth and ended the reign of the dinosaurs. Howdy, Hug. Hey, Ted. I got the game. Got the game. Now, where's the rest of the team? You guys doing that, honey? I'm around here. I'm on this. Yeah, I found it buried. Connection map.
An effortless way to transform the death with homemade skin therapy with Raymond oil.
Yep. What about a car I'm working on for a client?
Yes.
And any kind of metal?
Yes.
And cut to size?
Yep.
Any metal, any size, ready fast. Metal supermarkets. The road to partial onset seizure reduction can be long and winding. You feel like you're not in the driver's seat, afraid to try a new medicine because of side effects, or going backwards. The object that came in was 8 or 10 miles in diameter. That impact dug a deep hole, lost the material into the atmosphere. Black dust shrouded the planet in darkness for months, maybe for a couple of years. When time in which sunlight simply shut out from their cells, fully synthetic organisms like plants begin to die. Some tiny dinosaurs would have nothing to eat, would have died off. They meat-eating dinosaurs that have nothing to eat died. And this might have lasted anywhere from 5 to 10 years. How quickly the extinction took place is a matter of debate. But it is possible that some species of dinosaurs actually survived this cataclysmic event, and not only survived, but thrived for several thousands or even millions of years. Perhaps most can be recovered through a crater where scientists believe the giant asteroid struck the Earth, right in the heart of what is now the Yucatan Peninsula. Today, less than 90 miles from the epicenter of the asteroid impact, lies one of the largest and best preserved cities of the ancient Maya, Chichen Itza. You have to wonder if it's not some strange coincidence. The same spot that Yucatan, which experienced this devastating asteroid strike causing extinction of dinosaurs, is also the main habitation area of the ancient Maya. Chichen Itza is said to have been the place where the Mayans made contact with the gods. And I find it an extraordinary coincidence of all the potential places around the Gulf of Mexico, which they could have chosen a specific place where literally something fell from the sky 65 billion years ago. And the Mayans believe that this contact with the gods, this contact with the sky, happened there up until the most recent of times. And so what how the Mayans knew about the dinosaurs. Supposedly, dinosaurs were extinct for millions of years. But if, as mainstream scientists believe, the dinosaurs have been extinct for millions of years before the evolution of mankind on this planet, then what would explain the well-defined art depicting interactions between humans and what appear to be dinosaurs found in the very area where they supposedly died off? Creating custom clothing with half stitch is simple. Start by choosing a garment, then click Design Now. On the left, you'll see four main tools. Upload lets you add your artwork or logo. For the best results, upload PNG or JPG files that are at least 1024 pixels wide and 150 dpi. Text lets you add your brand name or any message to your design. Adjust the font, size, and color to match your design. Image gives you access to a built-in library of graphics icons. Under Products, volcanic eruptions. It will cover the sun for years. Devastating earthquakes and tsunamis. Some of the extraterrestrials themselves are influencing some of these events. And asteroids smashing the Earth, causing massive extinctions. What you're seeing is that this is the ultimate half the world's worst global disasters been the result of nature's fury, or have they been triggered by more supernatural forces? I don't think we can rule out the idea that this is the work of highly advanced technological aliens seeking to obliterate the human race. Millions of people around the world believe we have been visited in the past by extraterrestrial beings. What if we were true? Did ancient aliens really help to shape our history? And could there be an extraterrestrial connection to some of the world's mega disasters? Japan, Friday, March 11th, 2011. 43 miles on the northeast coast, a massive 8.9 magnitude earthquake produces an explosive upheaval of the seafloor. 200 miles away, in Tokyo, buildings shake violently. Within half an hour of the earthquake, a powerful 30-foot tsunami strikes the northern coast of Japan and sweeps across the landscape, reaching 6 miles inland, destroying everything in its path. Local officials estimate that over 19,000 lives were lost in the rapidly rising tide. Tsunamis are basically the name for a giant sea wave that's fairly coherent, has a lot of energy, and will travel over a large distance. And it's really a matter of scale more than scale. This huge amounts could cause significant damage when it hits the shore. These have to be generated by a large pulse of energy, but into the ocean. And the most common source of that is a massive earthquake under the ocean floor. They're used to earthquakes this one. But the fact that they have such little time, they just couldn't get away from it. So you can be a very sophisticated first world developed country. You can be a superpower and still have these kind of mega disasters come your way. According to Japan's Kyoto News Agency, in the day's flying devastation, thousands of UFOs were sighted over Japan. In short, what might this mean? It's interesting to note that when the tsunami occurred, there was suddenly an increase of UFO sightings in that area of Japan. So you have to think, well, are the extraterrestrials particularly interested in what happens to us in certain catastrophes and life-changing events that are occurring on this planet? And it's possible the extraterrestrials themselves are influencing some of these events. But is it really possible, as ancient astronaut theorists believe, that otherworldly forces provoke such deadly disasters? Crete, located in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, it is the largest of the Greek islands. Here, in 365 AD, this once quiet province of the Byzantine Empire was destroyed by a devastating underwater earthquake and subsequent tsunami. According to Roman historians, the tsunami also hit Alexandria, Egypt, and other cities along the Mediterranean coast, causing great destruction. Failure in 365 was one of the great natural disasters. It's the summer of 1950, and at the U.S. government laboratory in Los Alamos, New Mexico, scientists are breaking for lunch. 5 years earlier, this was the home of the Manhattan Project, the top secret effort to build the first atomic bomb. But now, in a lighter moment, the discussion at one table has turned to flying saucers. It begins with a humorous story involving aliens. But soon the scientists are debating when it might be possible to travel to the stars.
I hate Twitter.
After a while, the conversation turns to more earthly topics. Then, out of the blue, Fermi suddenly blurts out a question. Where is everybody? Fermi was still thinking about extraterrestrials, and he had just realized that something wasn't right. Fermi then did some quick calculations on the spot that confirmed his suspicion. If there were advanced extraterrestrial civilizations elsewhere in the galaxy, it's likely we would have picked up some sign of them by now. Maybe signs of several civilizations. The fact that it hasn't happened is now called the Fermi paradox, after the man who posed the question. Fermi wasn't the first person to wonder why we haven't yet seen any signs of alien life in the universe. But as a gifted scientist, he framed the problem in a way that would resonate far beyond that lunchtime conversation. Over 6 decades later, the Fermi paradox remains unsolved, even as the evidence has mounted that the basic ingredients for life, including carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen, are among the most common elements in the galaxy. Astronomers have also discovered hundreds of planets beyond our solar system and directly observed the swirling disks around young stars where new planets are forming right now. All of these new data continue to suggest that if life happened once, right here, it must have happened many times, increasing our chances of contacting an advanced civilization. This optimistic reasoning is further bolstered by the fact that life on Earth has a long history. We know from fossils that over the eons, many different kinds of creatures have called this world home, and that evolution has been very effective at ensuring that life continues to adapt and flourish with changing conditions. The earliest traces of life come not from fossils, but from microscopic patterns and chemical traces in ancient rocks. These show that bacteria were already living on our planet at least as early as 3.5 billion years ago. And that means the first cells and the first DNA must date back even earlier.
In your video released today in the alpha, it was the first day of the game actually being out. It was not a limited time test. It is going to be running from alpha. It's in the closed beta and open beta. It's released, and so the server's going to be out the whole time. It is actually out and playable. And I already played for 6 hours today. I have a few things to share with you that would be helpful to know if you're starting to play Humanity and some more information on stuff like that. So let's go over all that in this video. Should be good. And it's the Humanity look at it. It runs at 60 FPS. That is great. Actually, so guess what? Yes. What Band and Burrows will do at Drag Race is fun with Texas, which means if you're first or second, you get to keep your car. But however, if you are third place or fourth place, you'll have to give away your car. You can only use the cars that we already have in our garage. So it's going to be very dramatic. Somebody, please. I don't want to get rid of any of my cars.
I worked so hard for my cars.
Same, no, stop. You don't have to get rid of any car. Get the best car every round, fast and control. Yeah, first or second. The big man is out on the track, and all eyes are on the greatest sprinter in history.
As ever, when we see the top sprinters, and particularly that man, there's great Jamaican support. It's a long way from Jamaica to Beijing, but he doesn't lack the support, and even if it's not.
All right, check out the game. We're legitimately creating a planet Earth and the life of every person on the planet in Universe Sandbox. Universe Sandbox is a game where I'm present. YouTube's darkest mystery. A lot of people have sent me this video. Like that. Exactly. All right.
Right, hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about Tokyo City 100 meters champion suite and more specifically, we'll be talking about what cards you want to use for your respective decks. One thing that has been going around is who cards should I go for? Full gas deck? How many gas cards do I need to use? What kind of cards am I needing for in order to get maximum force? So why is gas so important on CM? It's because there is street line here, 500 meters ish, which means that there's a very high chance of building and backfires very often, and the extra speed from building is enough to make them really very, very hard. So that's why you want to have a lot of gas as classes is standard. Assassination of John F. Kennedy, Friday, November 22nd, 1963. John F. Kennedy served as president during the height of the Cold War. During his presidency, he saw the increase of military spending on both nuclear and conventional forces and increased the number of U.S. advisors in Vietnam from 400 to 16,000. The Bay of Pigs fiasco, the failure of 1,400 Cuban exiles. Do we have definitive proof of upload your videos to YouTube? Upload to Restream, where we will live stream it to YouTube and all your platforms at once. Get ready for 5 times more engagement and views. All the algorithms love streams and engagement, rewarding you with even more views. While you sure that works, upload the stream for Restream. What up, guys? Master Sally here. After your box, we're going to rip some back. Let's go. Now we're going to do it in the digital layer on box. I'm excited. Let's go. I want to win all of them. Do we have definitive proof of life on other planets? That's the question I've been excited about since I was a little kid. One of my work also answers that next question of who's living that. Is anyone living that could actually try and find life? There are many interesting ideas for how that could go. Just see that life starts very quickly. The thing you have to be careful with that is that it took 4 billion years to go from whatever that first creature was all the way to us. And if that's typical, then Earth doesn't have that long left. It's terrifying. David Kimming is a professor of astronomy and astrophysics at Columbia University. He's here to definitively answer the question, is there life on other planets? And what can we be doing to prepare? And George may be very reminded about what the answer is. We have no idea what they're going to do. So many we seem to have evidence of ancient microbial life on Mars. When we talk about biosignatures for any Martian rocks or looking for gases in atmospheres, why do scientists feel comfortable calling that legitimate science? But we feel uncomfortable talking about UFOs, just about ways of looking at aliens. Surely there's another question here. Surely there's someone out there who just raised the question, why would they have any interest in communicating with us? Hi, I'm Maya Biala. And I'm Jonathan Cohen. And welcome to our breakdown. We're very honored today to feature literally the guy whose job it is to search for life on other planets. We're talking to Professor David Kipping, and Dr. Kipping is a professor of astronomy and astrophysics at Columbia. He's the director of the Cool World Lab. He also has a YouTube channel by the same name, Cool World, with over 1 million subscribers. And Dr. Kipping is here to definitively answer the question, is there life on other planets? And what can we be doing to prepare for that information? He also discusses the evolution of human life, how we got to this point, and what Earth will look like in 1 billion years, just a blink of an eye in evolutionary terms. He's also going to talk about black holes, wormholes, the multiverse, and baby universes. All that and so much more. We are thrilled to have Dr. David. We would love for you to start us off with what are you most excited about? When today, no, all right, not the best day. Let's keep going back. It is often a journey. I mean, that's what discovery is. Science is often about highs and lows. So there's an emotional roller coaster involved in all of this, but generally, I think it's a very exciting time to be alive.
This is actually something I was discussing with my older son, who's 20, because we were stargazing the other night, and I was telling him that story that we old people, meaning someone who's over 40, will tell that memorizing the 9 planets was my main job in terms of my relationship to astronomy or the universe. That was my job as a kid, right? And that's sort of where things stopped for us. There was no internet for us to be looking things up. Our knowledge about the universe was incredibly vast and incredibly limited. And in just this one generation, I have a child who very casually understands that, oh, there's trillions and trillions of stars, planets, and other galaxies. Like, we're not alone. That's just like a normal thing, right? For this next generation to be experiencing. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the bridge? What would you say is kind of like the most definitive breakthrough that we've seen that allows us to go from there are 9 planets to there's actually only 8, and also there is so much beyond that we can now actually search for biosignatures. We can search for what it looks like when other planets possibly had life. What's that bridge? What happened in this generation?
Yeah, I think there's actually there's two bridges. One is conceptual, which is just purely in our own heads, really. We could have found planets exoplanets much sooner than we did. But it was that obviously got in the way. And whether it was technological, which is the obvious answer. So I'll give you the conceptual one first. So even in the 1970s and even arguably the 60s, we had the capability with our telescopes to measure the wobbles of stars at a level of precision which was enough to detect some existing known exoplanets that we detected in recent years. So to be able to do that, you have to be able to see a star move back and forth and see its speed change of order of millions of meters per second. And the very biggest planets, which are really close to the star, the closer the planet gets to the star, and the heavier it is, the more it can tug that and make it move around and oscillate very fast. A good example is like if you get a coin drop, you throw a coin down one of these charity wells, and it speeds up as it gets closer and closer and closer and closer. And it's the same thing with planets. Like the closer they get, the faster they orbit, so the faster they turn the star that they go around. So some of this we're approaching thousands of meters per second. And we could have detected them back in the 60s and 70s. And actually, in the 1950s, there was one astronomer. His name was Otto Struve. And he's completely forgotten about them at the time. And now everybody cites him as a genius for his insight. But he pointed out that, hey, they sometimes, Jupiter mass planets don't live really far away from their star, like Jupiter does and Saturn does. Maybe sometimes they get really close. And it was everybody's crazy. So how? No, that doesn't make any sense. Right? If we understand how Jupiter forms, we need lots of devices to make these gas giants, and ice would not be stable that close to a star. So it would just be too hot. So you can't possibly make a Jupiter that close. Everybody just kind of dismissed it. But we now know that many hundreds of these so-called hot Jupiters that were lurking in our data for years, even decades, without anybody just looking for them. So I think it's just a concept about them that we grow up, as you said, like we grow up else would look like that, more or less. And then when we found it was totally different, we went back, we're like, oh, damn, we could have found stuff a long time ago. And the big technological thing is just the same kind of technology. iPhones, video photography, like cameras right now, that chip technology enabled a much higher quantum efficiency of capture of photons. And so we're able to go from basically they capture 10% of the photons to 100% of the photons. So overnight with that technology, we get basically 10 times more photons and that's square root 10 higher signal to noise. They accelerate a huge breakthrough as well.
Now I'd like you to take us to something that happened very recently, where we seem to have evidence of some sort of ancient microbial life on Mars. And this is something that when you posted about it, you said something very tender, for scientists among us. And what you said is like, my heart can't take it if this is not evidence of life on Mars. Can you talk a little bit about, if I were to ask you the basic question, do we have definitive proof of life on other planets? Where would this Mars data fit into that?
So speaking to our last point, because I don't study Mars, I'm not a solar system type scientist, but speaking to my point about this, the data is very transparent. So you see these kind of speckles which look like some things that you get from microbial bacteria inside rocks. So that's enticing, but of course we don't have direct evidence of bacteria in those rocks. We haven't collected a sample, we've had dissected it, pulled apart its DNA, like get it down to the sexual. This is fine. So it is another example of a biosignature. I think it's fair to say, a very nice biosignature, but it's still an example of biosignature. That means a indirect telltale sign of life. But we see that before with Mars. So years ago, methane on Mars was claimed still there. It's still a very provocative potential signal of life. But a lot of debate has started since then. Maybe this is geological. Maybe there are methane traps deep inside underneath the crust that are leaking out sometimes. And it looks like this seasonal biological activity. But in fact, it could just be something geological going on as the crust warms up and releases some of this gas seasonally. We've also seen it most famously, I remember as a kid, going back into Bill Clinton, stood at the White House door and talking about this famous meteor called the Allen Hills meteor. And it had these little worm-like fossils on it. And everybody was just so excited. Like, this seemed like the real deal of life on a Martian rock. This wasn't actually collected from Mars, right? This was what knocked off Mars, that then traveled to the Earth, came through the atmosphere, landed in Antarctica, and someone picked it up and put it under a microscope. Making healthcare better for all, starting with you. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Want to work in AI, software, or systems design? WGU's computer science degree teaches the fundamentals behind it all, plus the real-world skills to build what's next. Get started. Level up with Marks. It's amazing. Number one, play the shit for these kids. Don't need to pay more for the grants. Marks. The job done. Shape comes. Don't drink. Marks. You're American way. What the? This is more than shit. It's Marks. And that media still is very enticing, but in the years that followed, other laboratories were able to show that you could take something that was very, very similar to those little worm-like things without any biology involved, just kind of passive water and minerals that you find in Mars together. You can sometimes get things that look like that. So that's always the story of this like broken heart. This is this recurring tale of math sometimes, and scientists do all of that due diligence and then find out there's a real way of producing that signature. Now that in itself doesn't prove it's not life, because it could, just because you can make it without life, it still could be life, but it provides an alternative rational explanation that doesn't require the evidence to be focused on. Normally, as scientists tend to leave on like sinless, dogmas like we can get away with, but big sensational we can get away with. And so for these reasons, Alan Hills, Martian methane, and who knows what happened with this one, but there has been a recurring story. So we just have to come braced for that. Like the lessons in history teach us that we often do get somewhere.
My Meals Breakdown is supported by IQ Bar, one of our absolute favorite snack hydration and coffee sponsors. IQ Bar protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes, and IQ Joe mushroom coffees are the delicious low sugar brain and body fuel that you need to win your day. The Ultimate Sampler Pack is a great way to try all IQ Bar products and flavors. You get 9 IQ bars, 8 IQ Mix sticks, and 4 IQ Joe sticks. All IQ Bar products are clean label certified and entirely free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial ingredients. They're packed with clean, delicious ingredients that keep you physically and mentally.
Fernando goes nuts after getting suspended. All right, let's watch it. Aaron, too long? Yeah, sure. An officer responds to a high school for a 14-year-old student who allegedly assaulted him. Oh, wait.
We are less than 6 months away from the return of the Dragon Ball Super anime, with Dragon Ball Super Beerus in the build-up to the Galactic Patrol or the Moral Arc, and we are here for some more news. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I'm so sorry if you guys can hear the DC in the background. It is hot as on the coast right now, but that is
I remember being in middle school and people using apps after gym class like it was a shower replacement. And have you thought about what civilization looks like on Mars?
there's 2 problems that we're going to have in order to make that dream a reality. How do you come home? So nobody likes talking about this because it takes away the hero image of the astronaut. But you've had plenty of astronauts freak out in space. They tried to kill their whole crew before. It's going to be horrible. Elon has correctly identified probably the most important goal for Mars is to make it self-sustaining. So if someday something terrible were to happen on Earth, why should
There's so many cute dogs out here today. Let's take some pics and make someone's day. Your dog's so cute. Is there a way if I take a photo? Yeah. Can you share it with me? Yeah. Oh, but I have an iPhone. No worries. Pushshare works with AirDrop. And send. Honestly, I could do this all day.
this is Arby's pulled pork and chopped brisket. This is the juicy result of slow smoking meat from the 13.
Have you thought about what civilization looks like on Mars?
There's 2 problems that we're going to have in order to make that dream a reality. How do you come home? So nobody likes talking about this because it takes away the hero image of the astronaut. But you've had plenty of astronauts freak out in space. They tried to kill their whole crew before. It's going to be horrible. Elon has correctly identified probably the most important goal for Mars is to make it self-sustaining. So if someday something terrible were to happen on Earth and resupply ships stopped coming, our species could continue on.
When it comes to getting to Mars and everything that SpaceX is doing, it seems like everything is geared towards that. What is it going to take to get there?
Yeah, well, I would say first, like they're very good at setting very challenging goals at SpaceX, but when they achieve them, the capability has utility beyond that. So, um, they want laser link communications between spaceships, but that also creates a giant mesh network across the constellation of Starlinks, which allows them to sell more consumer broadband and sell airplane and ship and vehicle internet connectivity, not to mention people living in sparsely populated areas, which contributes revenue, which further funds space development. So my point is, like, they kill a lot of birds with one stone. So yes, there's certainly an organizational objective of making life multiplanetary, and our best first stop on that journey is Mars. But when you have a fully reusable vehicle that tops off and refills propellant in low Earth orbit, you can send it anywhere. You can send it to the moon if you want. You can send it past Mars. It doesn't necessarily even have to have people on it. You could use it to send cargo for point-to-point DoD applications. You could put giant telescopes in them and send them to every corner of our solar system and have them be like these prefab, discovery probes, because you basically have factories building these prefab spaceships. So the point is, even though it's like kind of a Mars focus, what they will get from this breakthrough of fully and rapidly usable vehicles has like broad utility. But man, Mars is a hell of a goal. It is the Manhattan Project, and there is a lot of things they're going to have to get right, and a lot of things the government is going to have to do. It can't all be on SpaceX's shoulders, and for that matter, all those other entrepreneurs you were talking about, they're all trying to contribute to that effort. Lots of problems that need to be solved in order to make that dream a reality.
I mean, what year are we looking at here? Is there a time frame?
I would say that within 10 years, we'll have astronauts on Mars. I don't want to ever be out of sync with some of Elon's timetables, but I think he's even recalibrated to probably 2030s are a lot more realistic than. But we're going to see some cool stuff along the way. Like, do I think in 2026 he's going to send some starships with some Optimus robots on them, and maybe some will crash into Mars, maybe some will land? Totally. That's going to look pretty awesome when you see a robot walking around on Mars, even if it happens in 28. So it's not like we'll be without some entertainment over the next 10 years until this happens.
I mean, what are some of the biggest obstacles? I mean, we've got power and/or fuel, we've got food, we've got oxygen. I mean, you just brought up all the debris that's gone. I've never thought of that.
Yeah.
They're going to be refueling points. We're going to stop on the moon. What are the big problems that we need to solve before he does that?
I think there's two problems that we're going to have in order to make that dream a reality. There's a lot of them. I mean, look, the re-entry of Starship into the Mars atmosphere, propulsive landing, all that. But let's just assume they solve all those things. How do you come home? So that's the biggest issue I think of, is like you will be able to get astronauts there a lot sooner than you would be able to bring them home safely, and there's no one-way mission to this point. If someone wants to sign up for a one-way mission to Mars, auto excluded from the list. See ya. And you're absolutely the wrong mindset to go on an endeavor like that. So you have to have pretty high confidence that you get people back. Right now, if SpaceX were to do this entirely on their own, they're going to need to mine propellant, manufacture propellant on the surface of Mars, and they need a lot of power to do that. So you need either a nuclear reactor on a Starship to create surface power, or you're going to need like endless football fields of solar cells, which I don't love that idea, because I don't know you can have a million Optimus robots maintaining it, cleaning off all the dust and everything. Not to mention, the farther you are away from the sun, the less utility there is in solar power. So I think it's going to be nuclear, and you're going to need to make propellant to top off your Starship to launch back home. And if you see Starships launch here on Earth, they have this whole stage zero, which is the whole tower with 1,000 people working on it under an atmosphere of 1 G, and it still isn't going. So pulling off that operation, refuel and come home is going to be hard. I think the government can help with that by kind of working on what no one else is capable or willing to do. That's hard, but near impossible, which is start building nuclear electric propulsion, nuclear spaceships. I think it's absolutely the right mini Manhattan project for NASA, get America underway under nuclear power in space. If you can do that, take a lot of pressure off of the in-situ resource manufacturing. And then number two is going to be human. People are going to have a hard time. So nobody likes talking about this because it takes away the hero image of the astronaut. We've had plenty of astronauts freak out in space. They tried to kill their whole crew before. Like there was a lock put on the space shuttle door for that reason. Somebody tried to open the hatch more than once and take everybody out. There's a lock on the Dragon space capsule for that reason. That was a carryover from that time period. It's happened to Russian cosmonauts. It's happened to American astronauts, and this is during a time when most of the American astronauts were the best of the best coming out of the military. So it is a unique environment, and that stressor has caused people to crack. So that's the psychology of it. Now, when you're in low Earth orbit, you can be in the water in 90 minutes. So you're 90 minutes from being on a helicopter ride to a cheeseburger, and people have cracked in space. When you're on the moon, you're 2.5 days from coming home. And when you're on Mars, you could be anywhere from 6 to 9 months to well over a year before you can come home. So, and think about it from again, we get into the psychology of it. When you're in low Earth orbit, you look out your window, you see big Earth. When you're on the moon, it's still the blue marble. When you're on Mars, it's a blue speck in the sky. So, we're going to have the psychological issues to deal with when you send humans to that environment, and then you're going to have physiological issues, which is we didn't evolve to be in sub 1G. So astronauts spend 6 to 9 months on the space station. They come back to Earth, they're wrecked for 2 weeks, right? So basically, that's the equivalent time of going to Mars. So when they get to a reduced gravity environment, they step off the spaceship. Are they going to throw up in their helmet? What if we have to do surgery? Nobody's done surgery in space. I mean, it's only a matter of time when you're on multi-year missions that someone's going to have a ruptured appendix maybe or something else that goes on. So all the things that make us who we are going to be highly problematic on journeys of 2 years plus in space. And we got to figure that out. At some point, that doesn't mean you have to have it for the first 4 people, but if you're talking about sending thousands of people in space, there's a lot onto the outpost on Mars. There's a lot from the psychology and physiological side of being a human being to figure out.
Man, it's just something I can't even fathom. I mean, sending thousands of people to another planet when we haven't even sent anybody back to the moon. How long is that? 60-something years?
Yeah.
And I mean, what do you think the plan is? I mean, we got 1,000 volunteers. We're going to Mars. I mean, what does that look like?
Well, first, I mean, again, I think you got to have some of the most highly screened individuals possible, and because we haven't learned anything about this yet. I'm the analog astronaut environments where they put people in shipping containers and bubbles. Look, you do learn some things from it, but you open the door, you're on Earth. If somebody's having a heart attack, you open the door, they're gonna, it's you always know in your mind that underneath you is your home planet. So it's just it's gonna be that psychological stressor, not to mention all the physiological issues. You're gonna have to pick some highly screened individuals that are capable of going on that mission. You have to know for sure that you have a way to bring them home. There are no one-way missions on those first ones. You get that right, and then you can start building up that outpost. Look, in terms of the technical skills to go, whether it's the moon or Mars, the incremental velocity, whether you're going to the moon or Mars, is temperature. So if you can build a spaceship and top it off in low Earth orbit with tons of propellant, you can send it to the moon or Mars. The only difference now at this point is habitability, landing, and how you come home. Starship should be both for should be able to work fine for both, considering both are designed for habitability landing. But coming back from the moon is a hell of a lot easier than coming back from Mars. Car takes a corner.
All he doesn't pay for car rent. We're saying this was tricky.
Difference. Let's save your money. It's an all these.
my week back by using this one tool, and no, it's not worth it. So I'm a full-time content creator that makes scripted videos and editing brand deals and a ton of emails. And I'm working eating away most of my day. I would have like 8 different apps open just to finish one email. That's when I started using Superhuman. It sits right on the side of my screen, pulls up context from my favorite apps, and all I have to do is tell their AI chat when I need help, so I can complete all my work in one place without having to bounce through endless tasks. Now I actually have the time to focus on the things that move my business forward. Try Superhuman. This is what working at your best looks like.
As the health director in Haven County and a nurse here in North Carolina, I can tell you that the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline saves lives.
No matter your struggle, you are not alone. The 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is free, private, and always safe.
We talk a lot on this show about protecting your family and being prepared for the worst case scenario. But there's one area of protection that a lot of us, myself included, for a long time tend to procrastinate on, and that's life insurance. I've had term life insurance for several years now, and I remember the exact moment I realized I needed it. It was right around the time my son was born. I started thinking about the mortgage, the kids' education, and all the expenses I'd want to cover if the unthinkable happens, and I'm not here to provide for them anymore. But having a plan in place is what actually allows you to breathe easy. If you've been putting this off because you think it's too expensive or too much of a hassle, you need to by Gerber Life. Fabric by Gerber is term life insurance you can get done today. Made for busy parents like you, all online, on your schedule, right from your couch. You could be covered in under 10 minutes with no health exam required. A lot of people assume their work-life insurance is enough, but most policies don't provide nearly enough coverage and don't follow you if you leave your job. Fabric offers affordable, high-quality life insurance, like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Fabric is partnered with Gerber Life, trusted by families just like yours for over 50 years. And Fabric is rated excellent on Trustpilot with over 1,900 five-star reviews. There's no risk. You get a 30-day money-back guarantee, and you can cancel at any time. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/SRclips. That's meetfabric.com/SRclips. meetfabric.com/SRclips. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Insurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. I mean, have you thought about that? Have you thought about what civilization looks like on Mars? It's hard. Let's say in the next 2030-ish seems to be the goal. What does it look like in 2060?
Not much better. I mean, it's going to be horrible for a while. That's why, like, there's a there's a spectrum here of making life multiplanetary. Elon has correctly identified probably the most important goal for Mars is to make it self-sustaining. So if someday something terrible were to happen on Earth and the resupply ships stop coming, that our species could continue on. Totally. From my perspective, like, Mars doesn't have to become Earth. It never will become anything like Earth, not in any foreseeable future. It is more of an outpost in my mind. It is more akin to a research station in Antarctica than anything else. Like, we need to get there and show that we can get there and that we can, maintain an outpost and, generate power and propellant and learn things with the idea that we are going to continue on, that it is one stop on a much longer, grander journey, because that is not going to be a good home. And we also have never faced anything like this in our history here on Earth. The age of exploration, you get on a ship, you go from Europe to the New World. Trees are trees, water is water, fish are fish, deer are deer. You work really hard, you chop down enough trees, you build a bigger house. You figure out, you're trapping fur and you're selling enough of it, like you're wealthy or whatnot. You could spend your entire life on Mars, you could be in a bubble. Like, you're not going to go outside and, chop down more trees and build a nicer bubble. So life there is not going to be pretty. But we have to go there, and we have to have that stepping stone if we want to go even farther. And we must, because even Mars is, again, it's our next door neighbor. It's nothing compared to the trillions of galaxies out there are inevitably destined to explore.
How do you think NASA, and you had mentioned earlier that SpaceX should be the one to have the head of all of this up? Where does someone like NASA fall into play?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question, because of late, there's been this kind of like, do we even need NASA? Of course we need NASA. Like NASA, a government agency, why are we all chipping in as taxpayers into an agency like NASA? Because you need NASA to do what no one else is capable of doing. Like what no organization, nonprofit, or company is capable of doing. And that's what they did for a really long time. And parts of it today, they still do. Like the whole science, planetary sciences side, heliophysics, they're doing things that no one else will do unless we as taxpayers fund it, and we should, because we should want to know about the solar system around us. We're highly dependent on our star. We should know as much as we can about that. The star can get angry at times, create solar storms. It's problematic for our way of life on here. We should study these things. But then there's another side of NASA, and it's about 40% of the budget, that does a lot of things that SpaceX and companies eventually like Blue Origin, Rocket Labs, and Stoke will be capable of doing. And that's a problem. It's a problem when NASA's in the business of building rockets, and so is Blue Origin, and so is SpaceX. Because if you're doing what other people are doing, what's the draw? Why wouldn't you just go work at SpaceX and you get a bunch of stock that's going to be worth money, or go work at Blue Origin and get a bunch of stock that's going to be worth even more? NASA needs to constantly be recalibrating, do the near impossible what no one else is doing. And the things they figured out, they hand off to industry. Industry is going to build rapidly reusable rockets that will reduce the cost of space materials. Awesome. I hope SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Rocket Lab are competing like crazy, because they're going to make their rockets awesome and lower cost. What should NASA be doing? But they can build nuclear spaceships. They know these companies are not going to play around with highly enriched uranium. They're never going to take the liability nor get the approvals to launch, nuclear reactors with highly enriched uranium in it. That's exactly what taxpayers should be funding NASA to do. And in doing so, it will help enable commercial industry to do what they want to do. So that's kind of, the division of responsibilities.
And then, what do you think the most important part of the journey to Mars is? Is it exploration? Is it a fallout shelter of Earth cease to exist? I mean, what in your mind, what is the most important part of, or all of the parts of why we should be going?
So look, there's an optimist side and a pessimist side. The optimist side is like, who knows what we may find? If we find out there was life there at some point in time or another, that'd be quite the development. Actually, it's very helpful for funding all things space related, because in my mind, there's only two ways you have the future that we all dream of someday. One of which is an orbital economy that helps pay for it all, or two, find proof that we're not alone. Because if you do, the demand for that knowledge will be insatiable, and it will fund lots of exploration and discovery missions. So that there's a possibility we might find proof of life. The capabilities we will develop in order to get to Mars will become a national asset. We can use it for transporting telescopes, for mining asteroids, for going to and from the moon, and healing through, like all these capabilities, like I mentioned before, that will need to be pioneered in order to make that mission possible, will be useful. You build nuclear spaceships, you can have solid state lasers in space, you can have a whole new Golden Dome apparatus as a result of it. So there's lots of like good or useful things that can come from establishing an endeavor like that. The kind of more negative approach to it, or hedge, if you will, is what if something really awful happens here on Earth? There aren't any dinosaurs around anymore. So you pick it. Eventually, at some point or another, our star will kill us off. Or maybe it's a bioweapon, or a chemical weapon, or a nuclear war, or some new virus that just appears out of nowhere and takes us out. I mean, we're an asteroid. That's just a matter of time. So for all those reasons, it seemed to make sense that we should, hedge our bets a little bit and start, spreading out. Not to mention, I just think it's our destiny. I think that there's way too much space out there and too much to learn for us to just sit here.
Fascinating stuff. No matter where you're watching the Sean Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this at all, anything, please like, comment, and subscribe. And most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, head to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave us a review.
When the space race launched in 1955, few could have imagined a future where the resulting technology would play such a critical role in everyday life for governments, businesses, and individual consumers like it does today. Satellites, rockets, and space stations have sparked tremendous advancements in everything from communication and navigation to remote sensing and intelligence gathering to cutting-edge scientific research. Over the last 20 years, the International Space Station has conducted research that has led to breakthroughs in drug development, 3D printing, and water purification systems. Satellites provide internet, TV, and radio around the world, feed our weather forecasts and geophysics models, and help us navigate that world in
In March 2010, a mysterious pulsating light floated over Cleveland, Ohio for 11 consecutive nights.
We're having a sighting right now over the lake. I'm going to say 270 degrees south. There are two objects. One is coming up from the left. These are extremely close to each other. There's absolutely no way these are planes. Right now, what's happening is the initial object that came out is sitting there, it's hovering, it's getting extremely bright, it's illuminating different colors. And this second object appeared from, I'm going to say, the top left of it, and now looks like it's moving around it. Wow, they completely just switched spots. Oh my God, this is beautiful. It knows we're watching. It knows we're watching.
The Cleveland sighting is one of thousands reported each year, and while many are proved to be false alarms, others are not so easily discredited. In 1991, the Ministry of Defense assigned a journalist called track the hundreds of UFOs reported over England, Scotland, and Wales every year. The Ministry of Defense has been looking at UFO issues since the 1950s, and the whole reason for looking at these UFO sightings is not necessarily because the department corporately believes in extraterrestrial visitation. It's more to do with keeping a watchful eye on any unusual activity in British airspace. Clearly, there's something there that's a little out the ordinary we want to know about. My beliefs when I was given this job were, I think, what on earth have I let myself in for here? I had no particular knowledge or interest in UFO phenomena, certainly no belief in anything unusual. But the more I looked back through the archive of old files, the more I began to investigate the ones that were being reported to me on a daily basis, I began to change my mind and realized that some of these UFO sightings couldn't be explained in conventional terms. Many of the most intriguing cases of research involve eyewitness reports from pilots, police, and military officers, while others feature classified radar, video, or photographic evidence. One case that was a particular turning point for me was the so-called Cosford incident. Cosford is a military base in the United Kingdom, and on the particular night in question, which was the 30th of March 1993, there was a wave of sightings over a period of about 6 hours, and there were many police and military witnesses, and 2 Air Force bases, Cosford and Shortland, were directly overflown by a vast triangular-shaped craft. Now, the meteorological officer at one of these bases described this to me as the size of a jumbo jet, hovering or moving very, very slowly, and then accelerating away to the horizon at incredible speed. It is many times faster than a military jet. This was a man with 8 years' experience in the Air Force. This sighting was thoroughly investigated, not only by
by private UFO investigators, but also by the British government, who were unable to explain all of the sightings reported during this incident. Another intriguing British UFO sighting took place in December 1980. U.S. Air Force personnel stationed in Summit, England, reported seeing a brilliantly illuminated spaceship that landed in Rendlesham Forest on 2 consecutive nights. What made this case particularly unusual is that this was not vague lights in the sky. This was a landed metallic craft that some of the witnesses claimed they got so close to they could actually touch inside of it. One witness saw strange symbols on the hull, which he likened to Egyptian hieroglyphs. He made a sketch of this in his police notebook and took some photos, though he was subsequently told they didn't come out. The Ministry of Defense looked at this, and the Defense Intelligence Staff assessed radiation readings that had been taken at the landing site as being significantly higher than background. That's a direct quote from the government's own assessment. The British government generated a massive file of information about this sighting report. At this date, it's very unlikely that the actual truth about the sighting will ever be known. Baltimore, Maryland, November 9th, 2018. Thousands gather at the Baltimore Convention Center for Alien Con, a 3-day event dedicated to exploring the possibility that life not only exists on other planets, but that intelligent beings have been visiting the Earth for thousands of years.
I would like to ask this audience at this Alien Con, how many of you have had missing time and abduction experience, have encountered perhaps an entity in your room, or you have seen some kind of light craft that has left you with a feeling that you were seeing or experiencing something that was not human and fits into this category? How many?
Wow, that is an impressive show of hands. That's
The large numbers of allegedly abducted human bodies started from people. Equally impressive is the credibility of the stories.
Let me just say, I'm a very logical person. He looked at me, tipped his head down, and looked up. At that moment, his eyes went black. His nose started to turn almost white. And I couldn't break the gaze. I had to walk through the wall. I'm already negative, realize I do have some missing time. We wake up, we're not in our bedroom anymore. We're laying on the table. They put me up on the shelf. They just started on me.
Yeah, I had no idea what they were doing. I later found they were extracting sperm. But if alien abductions are really happening, what is their purpose? Are extraterrestrials simply examining the human species? Or is there another, even more profound agenda?
He brings Shelley and visits me on a regular basis. Apparently, he realized I was fertile in that way. As I began to do more and more deep research, eventually you come out at another layer. What are we? What are Homo sapiens taking in real? And then you get to my perspective today. We harvest the genetic material from this planet. And so one of our greatest questions is who walks around on our planet who's human, but is not?
Could human abductions be part of a greater effort by extraterrestrials to hybridize the human species with alien DNA? Many ancient astronaut theorists insist that such an audacious notion is not only likely, but that evidence of it can be documented by means of regression therapy. Marvel Lab has conducted Detective Robert Fullington, who has hundreds of his breaking up details of his numerous encounters with extraterrestrials over the course of the past 10 years.
I came to know Ivan 7 years ago, and since then, I've been conducting long interviews and have been doing regressions with them. And out of all that material, I have become convinced that they are indeed ET human hybrids living here on Earth.
I was 215 pounds, and I went down to 115 pounds. And the doctors had no idea what was going on. I was starting to have serious and things like throwing the city and then becoming aware that it's these little tiny clips of real clear interaction with family that nobody has learned.
A wonderful thing is that our subconscious part of our minds records everything that happens to us, even those things that we have not been consciously aware of.
On June 6, 2019, Barbara conducted another regression session with Robert.
Okay, I should come to that.
In an effort to find out not only why he would have done it, but also the specific way in which he might have been genetically altered.
So now we're going to go into a nice state of deep relaxation.
Later, and then we're going to
These people in line, so they lying down.
yeah, there's like a bunch of tables around. I feel like there's something concerning my stuff. It's distracting times. Like the collective DNA.
In regression, it turned out that one extraterrestrial actually made an incision and took out DNA. So that is something that has come across through my work. Some of them seem to be very scientific, and they want to understand how human bodies work and what our physiology is like. In many of the regressions I have done, it turns out that the ETs are creating hybrids for their own purposes.
Bill Texas. On the Congress meeting of January 8, 2008, more than a dozen including a police officer and a private pilot, spotted a spherical object floating silently across the sky.
It was burying his hands wide and they spanned a wide area.
So fast involved, and then God saying, we are reports released by the FAA, a permanent object without a transponder, exactly what ground observers see in the UFO.
And what do we say? The double investigation. Listen, like double hands, it's almost a pretty hands, but it's live. What would you like to take today? Every hobby a new world, like our full range of extraordinary hobbies, straight from the source, has to explore. Something that used to terrify me in my business was doing my finance. So now I use Zero. It generates a lot of reports that help me make sound decisions. When I think I'm slow, I can look at Zero. Zero's like, no, you're still doing good.
January 8th, 2008, encounter of a giant UFO over Stephenville, Texas, is particularly interesting. A number of people saw this giant glowing ball of light moving through the sky, which picked up on radar. According to reports, for 2 hours, UFO flew over 7 miles across the Texas countryside. Military aircraft only time. For years, radar records show they initially made no alert action for the unidentified object. The first Delta report said that this was not anything except for some bizarre optical phenomena such as a reflection of light in the sky. When you see people who have radar tracings, ground-based eyewitness reports, that's not a reflection. There's something going on. Stephenville, Texas certainly implies that UFOs are a commonplace occurrence in America and military stays out of the way. In the United States, there are over 6,000 UFO sites reported every year, more than any other country in the world. But why? Is there an explanation for such a high number of UFO sightings? Could aliens have a special interest in America? According to ancient astronaut theorists, not only are aliens watching over North America today, but in fact, they have been visiting us for hundreds and possibly even for thousands of years. And they must be evident to be found in the strange sites, structures, and monuments that lie in every corner of the continent. America is really a very mysterious place with all kinds of strange legends. So trying to put all of these things together in context shows us that we're living in a very unusual continent full of magic and mystery. Serpent Mound in Adams County, Ohio. The Kings at Chapo Canyon, New Mexico. Before Medicine Weaver in Wyoming. Many Native American tribes say that these ancient sites and countless others, entities that they call star beings, came down from the sky to teach their ancestors. To the Zuni people and other tribes, yes, they're the star beings. They're the ones that actually according to tribes like the Zuni and Hopi, stories of these otherworldly visitations exist not only in the oral traditions passed down from their ancestors, but also in pictographs carved into rock all across America. On the Zuni Pueblo in New Mexico, there are thousands of ancient carvings that most outsiders have never laid eyes on. And the Zuni claim that some of these petroglyphs depict visitations from star beings. The Apache Siggraves National Forest, Arizona, November 5th, 1975. 22-year-old forest worker Travis Walker is driving home after sunset with a group of coworkers when suddenly a strange light appears in the sky. I know it's supposed to look whoever the light comes from trees, and the light seems to be coming from higher than where ground level. It was only when we got to where this light was crossing the road, struggling through the grass. It was a clearly visible, clearly defined metallic body. A dense hovering there outlining the sky. Tried to open the door, thinking I'd get a closer look before it took off. As I got closer to it, the sound it was making, sounded, people heard it felt. And the second feel the vibration of the truck. He said it seemed like something was about to happen. And it was. That's energy. The crew said that it was like I stepped on the land, like an explosion so violent that they thought it killed me. With this human energy, yet I felt like a physical world, but with a sort of a tingling sort of an electric shock to it at the same time. I don't know whether I came to soon after I was thinking or, but I knew I was on some kind of an elevated journey or operating table.
right institutional around and struggle very long. This is those right institutional that and then shortly up, that's in the case of the one, I started to have serious misdemeanors that was arrested. And that's when they put this mask on my face and just blacked out real quick.
The suspicion here was that actually these weren't different aliens, these were the same aliens, but they were capable of shapeshifting into something else specific.
Travis Walton's story has become one of the most famous alien abduction cases ever reported. But it's true. Was he abducted by beings that are able to shapeshift and mimic humans? While Travis Walton's account is extraordinary, it is not entirely unique. There are many stories of these abductees, most right, then placed by and deceived extraterrestrials using this section like a book of some human extraterrestrials event. In 2013, public policy polling released data that showed 12 million Americans believe that shapeshifting is a process. One of the most extraterrestrials,
There is a theory that there are aliens among us, aliens in human form, that with an advanced guard and a bit of they want to line with the idea that perhaps as a prelude to a full-scale alien invasion, they infiltrate and they get their people into positions of power. And one could be walking right past you and you would know. People think of disclosures in the Army 24 landing on the White House lawn, spaceships in the sky. What if it's actually not that? What if aliens are already here?
Washington, D.C., April 2011. The FBI releases thousands of files as part of its online FBI vault. One particular file draws the attention of the media and independent researchers. The memo, dated March 22nd, 1950, is a brief to FBI Director James Hoover regarding important information about three flying saucers that were recovered in Mexico. Investigators immediately connect the memo to the infamous Roswell incident, a reported UFO crash that many people believe was covered up by the military in 1947. But this document is just the latest in a series of government files that have been released in recent years, suggesting that they lead more to the Roswell crash than the public was told.
As an investigative reporter, I think what I am amazed by how many leaked documents from the 1940s have actually come out into the world and lay out details about what really happened at Roswell. On July 4th, the rancher named Mac Brown finds all kinds of strange silver debris. He knows he doesn't understand what he's walking through. He decides to go into Roswell and tell the sheriff something has crashed on the ranch. Intel coming out of Roswell Army Airfield get assigned to go to the debris field. And these men are told that they are to pick up every single thing that is in the debris field on the Mac Brown Ranch. Everything is to be picked up.
On July 8, 1947, the headline on the front page of the Roswell Daily Record reports that the military had retrieved a flying saucer. On the following day, the officials
balloons will make gold cake this fortune anywhere in the world. These people, the best of the best. The idea that the intelligence personnel is based
Oh shit.
on whether something exalted is
Oh, I like that.
arguably the start of the UFO cover. Whether balloons, swamp gas, meteorite, it doesn't matter. It's always something else but a UFO. The Roswell crash was covered up. The fact that they retracted the story of having captured a flying saucer, in my opinion, it was quick PR damage control. We're all told that was just the weather limit. And for more than 30 years, that's what was left until witnesses started to surface, saying no, it was actually an extraterrestrial craft. And the people saw alien bodies. Roswell researchers suggest a government-sanctioned law of secrecy has prevented witnesses of the crash and retrieval from coming forward publicly. But many did choose to come forward later in life. The first military officer to arrive at the Roswell crash site, Major Jesse Marcel. According to his grandson, Marcel privately shared many details of his experience with the family. My grandfather, Marcel, had to tell us the 509 bombing. As a kid, basically around the dinner table, we talked about Roswell. And through conversations, we learned that my grandfather was the lead investigator in what has become known as the Roswell incident. And we looked for he couldn't make heads or tails or any sense out of what he was looking at. He gathered some debris and decided to take a call with it. He kind of came to this idea that whatever this stuff is, it's very significant. It's been changing that. And I want my family part of this. It's very important. According to the family story, Major Marcel came home after his first visit to the site and laid the debris out on the floor of the kitchen. Some of the material was a strange thin metal, similar to oil, except when crumpled up into a ball, it would bounce back towards the wall of state. There's a pretty famous picture of him holding a piece of debris, which is kind of full, basically, and it was weatherproof material. He grudgingly went along with the story, held it, and if you take a look at that, you'll notice that he's not looking at the camera. He's looking up at somebody barking orders. He fell in line, begrudgingly, and did what you do.
And everything on the IHOP value menu is just $6. You can go all out. These eggs, bacon, and fluffy pancakes are just $6 every day. And so cheap, there's a new BLC, and it comes with fries. Celebrate every day for just $6 with the IHOP value menu. Going back to school at 39, 33, 42. Compelling University. What can't you do?
Mandate brand protein. Wear for 5 days for less start. Mandate brand protein. Hi guys, I'm Macaulay Dolphin. Welcome to our cast. I've always loved spending time making our house at home. So Queen and I, San Diego, California, November 14th, 2004. Aircraft carrier investigate an unidentified aircraft on the coast of San Diego. A white oval-shaped craft that resembles a massive tic-tac. It's over 40 feet long, and it has no windshield or wings. The ship makes seemingly impossible stops and turns over the Pacific before accelerating away at thousands of miles per hour. David Frey, skilled pilot, he said, I am looking at speeds, 90-degree angles, stopping. Any human inside what I'm watching could not sustain life. We have these video things. We can actually calculate the velocity of these objects. We can calculate the G-forces of these ships. So that's the sea change. It used to be that if you were a UFO believer, technology is key. Any single fact that explains UFOs, it's the aspiration to acquire extraterrestrial technology. The nation first requires that technology is going to be a game changer for terrorism. It forms whoever figures this out first. So any developed nation is looking right now to leap ahead in technological innovation based on the first idea of what works in the sky, what our pilots are engaged in the sky, what then safe chase. The military's desire to monopolize extraterrestrial technology is reason enough to explain a cover up. But some believe there are additional motives for government secrecy, while others point to a general culture of bureaucratic secrecy that pervades all of government. Some disclosure advocates say that the reason why we haven't seen disclosure yet is because of economics, which have oil-based economy, and clearly the craft that we see in the skies are not running out of oil. They're using advanced propulsion systems that would completely transform the economies of Earth if they're ever implemented. So, yes, without that regular financial impact on the wealthiest people who live in the ground. But it's not the whole story. The government seems to be unaccountable to the American public. They may be accountable to their superiors, defense or NASA or others, but they rarely release anything. I think we're ready to find out what these phenomena are. Governments really mechanisms for that. I think it's because the compact between governments and their people is government provide security and provide oil. Raise the possibility which almost tease that raises big questions on that contract because it's clear that the government cannot provide security for us economy. And that would call the question, well, why should I be loyal to the government? It would undermine the sovereignty of the government and the sovereignty of the state. But even with a growing number of more open-minded policies concerning both UFO reporting and disclosure, there are no doubt that the U.S. military's penchant for secrecy will never really allow full disclosure. They insist that America is far too afraid that extraterrestrial knowledge could fall into the hands of its territorial enemies and permit that aliens to exist. Hawaii, June 27, 2014. Hawaii noble Robert Kamiki Ohumanu, affectionately known as Uncle Robert, opens the Star Visitor Sanctuary, a dedicated landing site for extraterrestrials visiting the Earth. Until his death in 2015, Uncle Robert stood at the forefront of his people's efforts to maintain contact with the starbeings who they believe are the Hawaiian people's true ancestors. Today, his dream continues, thanks to the efforts of people like his nephew-in-law, Jimmy Hoffel.
Uncle Robert was the chief of the area there. And there were other chiefs in the area, but amongst those chiefs, they came to Uncle Robert for guidance. He was included in every decision they made.
In June 2019, ancient astronaut theorists David Jones and Michael Stone arrived in Omaha. They needed to get a personal tour of the sanctuary and to hear a first-hand account of its history, creation, and mission.
Uncle Robert was the Prince of Peace, and he thought that, well, of course, big brothers and sisters, he thought they could certainly come down and perhaps we could move down to some Aloha, as if with guns pointed out, it might be my dad, someplace else.
So he was thinking that since the space visitors had originally come here to Hawaii, they would come back.
Yeah. Okay, you want to come out into the area we call the sanctuary?
This is the sanctuary here, right? It's like,
Yeah.
right here on the lawn.
Yeah.
Why did he choose these spots for the
Sanctuary, right. from where the paperwork is made, and the next day the law starts. So they got this one sign from the documentaries that even law starts to have evaluation of whether there is or not noise in it. Or maybe how to get into a particular area. And why not over here? Because you open the place to do it rather than someplace else. You may be fun, but then thanks for bringing me to the local. Special operation network. It explains what she finds about the top secret document that surfaced in 1924.
Called Bob 101, Majestic 12. And all of us saw that color. Experiential entities and technology. One of the solutions to this technology is to find out a way that they could fit in Washington before from the War Office. Turns out that they did all the way up to the 60s. And one of the more important people they found in a government training office. Okay. Yeah. And then when you start getting what
Documents. The man who picked up this room and were in communication with beings from other worlds, including top scientists